All right, we're back with the KPMG Arise Budget Day 2025. I am boasting them. Let's continue with one of the most critical sector of the Nigerian economy, power and grid decentralization. We've seen a number of collapse times with the national grid, but this is where investment needs to come in, and the government is really interested in doing that. Since the new administration came into office, we've seen the decentralization of power, state governments now empowered to do all that they can to bring more electricity to the people and help to industrialize the country. So the budget has a lot on the area of electricity, a major cost for both the government and the private sector. Let me introduce my panel, and I'm going to start from our landlord here in Lagos, and that's Dr. Ford Animashaun. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, one of my panelists, Wala Joseph Condotti, CEO and Managing Director, West Power and Gas Limited, and of course, Martins Arogie, who is the partner in charge of KPMG Tax, Energy and Natural Resources. Quite a lot.
Thank you very much.
But let me start with Dr. Ford, because Lagos State is a state of reckoning when you talk about Nigeria's economy. So you folks attract the biggest investments, and 20 million plus of us here live in Lagos. So how much progress is Lagos State making in power deliverables?
Thank you very much.
Very simple.
There's so much that's going on. In trying to put all this together, I think it's been a lot of challenge based on what we know was going on in Nigeria. Of course, the Electricity Act was passed in 2003 by the president, and then in December 2004, Lagos State passed its own electricity law in 2024. So basically, the law, which stems from the Electricity Act, opens up the market to state participation as a regulator to manage the entire value chain of the power sector. We're talking from generation, transmission, all the way down to distribution and the retail end. To that effect, the law also enabled, established the Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission, which I head. It also changed the Electricity Board into the Electricity Agency, which is an implementation arm of the state. They deal with street lighting and so many other installations. And then we created a fund also. This fund is also to support whatever initiatives and customers within the market. Currently, we're setting up the regulatory agency, and what we're trying to do right now is create regulation. Now, regulation alone is not going to solve our problem. We also need to attract investment into this market. On the federal government side, a lot has been done to support all the states. They've invested, they're investing about 2.1 trillion naira in this. Of that, transmission will take a major chunk of this, which is about 463 billion. Renewable energy will come after that. It will take about 430 billion. And then the distribution side will take about 305 billion. Why do I talk about this? It affects all of us in the country. So if you bring it down to ours in Lagos State, we've done what NERC, that is the national regulator, has told us to do. Yeah. So basically, immediately you set up your law, you write to NERC, they write to the DISCOs to set up their subcos. Setting up their subcos, those are the ones that we're going to be in charge of. So basically, you have the intra-market, which the states will deal with. You have the cross-border, which they will deal with, and then interstate they will deal with, and they also deal with the cross-border. So the two DISCOs have set up their subcos already. We've started engaging with them, which would be one of the crucial things. But having said that, the biggest problem that we're going to have is obviously the infrastructure deficit that exists. One thing that I must mention is, one thing we've noted in the budget is there is no real amount for subsidy in there that's been provided for tariffs. Now, we know NIC created band A to E, A being the highest, and obviously based on income strata, it goes all the way down to E. Now, you not having that means the whole idea is for us to take over and also take subsidy on top of us, of what we already have. This is one of the issues that I hope we'll be able to discuss further, because it's going to affect how we transit into taking over the market. So at the moment, we are going to call in all the market participants in Lagos to come and register with the new regulator. We're going to, after that, have a discussion with them how we want to develop this market. So we want a market that's going to be run cost-reflective tariffs. That means we're not hoping to add subsidy unless we have to. And they have to be targeted. We have to make sure that this subsidy, we can actually identify who is going to benefit from this. So we want to start with a cost-reflective tariff because investors need to earn their money. If you keep tariffs very low, you chase away investors. But the customers are very happy to see that. Now, if we continue with that, that's what already exists in the country. And we're not able to get enough power anyway. So we want to systematically, the approach that we're looking at, we've added into the Lagos State law something called the regulatory sandbox. Now, the regulatory sandbox is supposed to give us a period at which we want to test some models in this market. While we test that model, we're hoping that NERC gives us a bit of time to do this. And I mean, I'm saying this because of this tariff transfer to us to determine. Now, we need to look at the market. I'm going to take the highbrow areas. I'm going to take the low-end areas. I'm going to try and look at what actually works in those areas. I'm going to try and ring-fence them. When I ring-fence those areas, I'm going to test models in there. I'm going to test tariff. I'm going to test supply. Our approach will also be driven by service. Service delivery is crucial because if you have the service, and I mean you supply the right kind of power, you will it on either the transmission or the distribution, you meter it appropriately, you also make sure the wires are well fixed, the transformers are done. I have to be able to do that in such a way that when the customer is paying, it goes back to the entire value chain. If it doesn't go back to the value chain, we're doing the same thing we've been doing all along. So in my regulatory sandbox, I'm going to try and test that. And testing that, I'm hoping I can do it for 3 or 6 months because I need to tick out some things to be able to understand my market better. I'm not going to rush into this as much as everybody wants us because I'm already getting calls, oh, can I come and register? Can I come and do this? I'm trying to do it in a systematic way with my team that we reduce the amount of mistakes we make. We don't want to rush into this and have to go back into the same problem all over again. So we're hoping that people will give us enough time to do this. I'm not sure the regulation allows us enough time, but I'm also hoping that we will be able to liaise with NERC and also try and find a midpoint where they will understand what we're trying to do, and then they can give us that time.
Well, sir, thank you very much, and quite a whole lot to you, because I'm sure every other state in Nigeria will be looking at Lagos, whether we like it or not, to say, look, you folks are the poster boy when you talk about the country, so we want to see what works in Lagos. But let me go to Martins in terms of, it's been roughly 12 years since we ticked off the electricity transition arrangement going to private sector. What's your assessment of our journey so far?
I think it depends on where you stand and how you want to look at it. If you look at the numbers and focus primarily on the numbers, it would look like we've made some progress. People will tell you that at the time of privatization, without taking into consideration the NIPPs, we had probably about 5 generating companies. Now, if you look at all of the IPPs and the NIPPs that have come on stream, you're talking probably around 28, 29, 30 generation companies since privatization. So that's a good number in terms of increase. If you look at the rural electrification and the work that we've seen in the mini-grid space and renewable energy, and a number of mini-grids that have sprung up in very far distant areas that didn't have access to the grid, but now have some sort of access to power without being connected to the grid, you would say that we've seen some progress. If you look at in terms of even capacity, as at the time of privatization, the total capacity, grid capacity was somewhere around 6,000 megawatts. Today, it's somewhere around what we are told that the installed capacity is somewhere around 13,000 megawatts. Again, it's some progress. But I think if you ask the average Nigerian whether they've seen improved power supply between 2013 December and today, I think the jury will be out as to what that answer would be. And I think that's what's most important, ensuring that people see that tangible difference. And I very much doubt that we've seen it. And the reason is also isn't very, very far-fetched. We've also had a space where we've not seen the level of consistency and stability that would probably generate the right level of investments. With all of the talk around increased generation capacity, number of players that have come on, we've only added one major grid level generation plant, and that's the Azura plant over that time. And that's something. I listened to Dr. Fawad talk about the regulatory sandbox and all of that. And the question I asked myself is, would it provide the level of consistency and stability that is necessary to encourage and incentivize investors? Will people be able to draw up a financial model and say to themselves, this is what I expect if I invest in the Lagos State electricity market, knowing that there is a sandbox somewhere where things might change for 3 months, 6 months. So I think that we need to find a way where we bring a bit more stability into the market, a bit more stability into the sector, that will then be able to give investors the confidence that they can come in, put their money in, and see real progress.
Ms. Condotti, do you think we're still in a transition? Do you think we're still in transition?
Yes, I think we're very much still in a transitional...
In the energy sector?
In the energy, definitely. I mean, when you talk about the reform you just had recently, like Dr. Fawad spoke about, which was the Electricity Act, it was a game-changing act, a game-changing order. And so that has relatively changed the industry. And definitely we are still transitioning from that centralized system to a decentralized system. So we're very much still in a transitionary electricity market stage to that extent. Yes, an order was passed a couple of years indicating that we should go to a full-fledged competitive market, but we've not been able to achieve that if we look at that realistically. Remember that recently there was an order issued by NERC that we should start bilateral discussions, which is when the distribution companies can engage the generation companies to buy power directly away from NBET. And so NBET was supposed to fall away. But that particular process has stalled. So for me, we're still very much in transitionary stage, and we're still trying to get to the competitive market. It's getting a bit complicated with all of that, especially if you're saying we have shortfalls we still need to deal with. Yeah. That can never, ever support a competitive market. I mean, but looking at the budget today, and that's what we were discussing earlier, and we don't see any provision for subsidies. But the tariffs actually recognize the existence of a subsidy, of a shortfall in the market of about 399 billion as at February this year. So it's increasing every month. Lagos alone has about 100 billion in terms of tariff shortfall. So there's a lot to deal with. As long as there's a shortfall in the tariff, we are not in the competitive market stage.
Martins want to see, from KPMG, want to have deals for those who are going to bring in money into this Nigeria's power sector. I'm sure Lagos State is looking for those investors to also come in. And you as an operator also want investment. And what I've heard from big names such as Amia Power and a few others is that not just in Nigeria, but across Africa, we haven't been able to deal with the grid. So when KPMG put this as one of the topic thematic discussions today, I was very happy that grid decentralization is a major issue. That was a major discussion from the African Energy Summit, which was held in January in Dar es Salaam. It's all about how do we get African governments and those involved to get the private sector to come in there. One of the problems they mentioned was bankability and the assurance and the guarantee that they want the financial services industry, maybe a guarantee company, partial guarantee as it were. So I was happy that you got Infraco listed on NESD last week or so we can get the kind of comfort that they want to see. Because right now they are scared, and I'm sure you have this concern about if you go into the project today, I'm sure you hear that also from clients, will they be able to get the money, the return on investment? So how do we provide this comfort? Regulation is very important. Framework is very important. But we can't stay forever on that. We need to attract this money, and these investments are going to other locations across Africa. Nobody's going to wait for us. I'm sure we all agree on that. So what more would Lagos State want to do very quickly to attract and retain these investors who wants to go into this key area? Because if you ask any Nigerian in the last 24 months or thereabouts, it's going to be grid collapse, unless on the side of the discourse.
Yes. Okay, so one of the things we're looking at in the short term, so we've created something we call the CLEM, the Clean Lagos Electricity Market. Our plan is the major fuel we want to use in there is natural gas. But we also want to bring in renewables. We want to look at possibilities of hydro, though we don't have so many waterfalls in Lagos, but we want to look at different technologies. We want to be very diversified. Having said that, we are hoping to create a system operator, an independent system operator that will have a market operator, that will have a network operator. Now, the market operator, which will be the settlement side, we want to involve the players in the market in this. Again, like I said, we want to have cost-reflective tariffs, so we want to avoid subsidies as much as we can. Now, this market operator that we're talking about, I had a discussion with one or two of the discos in Lagos, the subcos, and they were asking me, how do you provide guarantees for me? And I said, look, providing guarantees for you is not really the biggest concern for me. It is a concern, but your service levels. Now, take, for example, somebody, I have a provider from Genco. It provides me power. I put it on an independent network in Lagos. Okay. It gets to the customer pays. That means I can pay the value chain. Mm-hmm. Now, the only problem within that value chain is if either the money is paid and it's not getting to the value chain, or there are leakages. I have ATC&C, that's what we call it, aggregate technical commercial and collection losses on the network. Wow. So I'm trying to reduce this to single digits. That means the infrastructure must be at least 95% enough to deliver power. That is why I mentioned the sandbox. The sandbox, I need to be able to take out certain things. And I say, look, if you're coming onto the grid in Lagos, you have to give me this amount of reliability. You have to give me this amount of affordability for my customers. Before, the play in Lagos was you would go, or to most discos, you would go to the disco and say you want to provide power and this and this. And the disco, for one reason or the other, will tell you no, or something will go wrong. I'm changing that narrative. First, you come to the regulator. You tell me what you want to deploy. I look at the cost of what you want to deploy. I look at the technology, I look at so many things there, and then I look at which part of Lagos this would fit into. I look at the kind of customers there. Does this tariff meet the kind of customers I'm looking at there? Because we know not everybody will be able to afford gas-powered initiatives. When I look at that, then I tell you, okay, either you're going to the subco to do this because you're on the network of the subco, or we take an REA kind of approach. You franchise out the area. Because this, if I put this on the grid, it's not going to meet the obligation of the grid as a whole. So I ring fence an area, and I either deploy renewable energy or I find another kind of technology that the customers can pay for. But I would have enumerated the customers. I would have known the kind of income strata I'm dealing with. So I know what I'm looking for. I need to do this because whoever the investor is, if you want to bring in renewables, if you want to bring in gas-fired, you have to know that these guys are going to be able to pay. So I must have enough data to show you and tell you, oh, this and this might work in this area, so let's explore it because you fit into this customer strata.
Okay, it's a very interesting point. Martin.
I think there are two elephants in the room that we still need to address. I think the plans are very, very great, but if we don't deal with those two elephants, we probably would struggle. And the first one is this. If you talk about gas, and then you talk about cost-reflective tariff, if you're going to do an embedded plant today, you probably would arrive at a tariff that is more expensive than the current Band A tariff for it to make sense for any independent investor. Now, if you look at the power sector in itself, one of the issues we had in the past was when we had MITO that was supposed to be reviewed periodically, and for political reasons we didn't. Yes. And then there were the questions of what happens first. We increase the tariff, and then people collect money, and then they're able to invest in better infrastructure, or we ask them to go find money somewhere, invest in better infrastructure, and then earn the right to increase tariff, the chicken and the egg situation. Now, you are probably going to end up in a scenario in various states where, because you want to be able to attract investment, you need to take up the tariff first. And then you'll be asking residents to pay more, even though they haven't seen improved quality, but trust that there will be improved quality. I think that there is a political situation there because of power, whether we like it or not. It's not just a business, it's also a utility. So states will need to be very, very creative how they manage that situation.
Okay.
And then if you then say, oh, I'm going to ring fence an area and get people to invest in getting a franchise. The question I would ask if you come to my area today is say, why would I enter into a long-term PPA with you? Because it's cheaper on the grid. And if the grid gets it right, even gives me 20 hours power, then I'm better off than entering into a long-term PPA with you. If I don't enter into a long-term PPA with you, then your project is not bankable. So states will need to be very, very, very creative.
Would you, in just 30 seconds, while I'm giving you the final shot, would you say, so Lagos doesn't have the water to do whatever. So should Ogun State help Lagos, put it all up in Ogun State that has so much rivers and whatever, and push it to Lagos and a good partnership?
Yes, I think it's it's something to explore. And that's one of the things I would definitely encourage is for states to collaborate. Not just stand alone, but collaborate as much as possible. Lagos does have a lot of water, though. I mean, I'm not sure relative to Ogun State, but I think Lagos does have a lot of water.
We have behind one.
So I'm sure there's some areas that we can.
Okay, so I'm going to, Martin, you're the financial advisor here. I think I'll hand over both of them to you to the next room, and then you can make sure they have a deal.
We're always available to assist.
Go to KPMG and get the deal done. And that's the power in grid decentralization. It's such a whole lot to digest from the budget. But we have a whole lot more coming up, still within the hour.